How are we doing there, boys and girls? Manthieus here. Welcome back to another video. So today we're going to take a little bit of a look at Alchemy, and we're going to try and get this leveled up from 0 all the way up to 100 if possible. There is some similarities with Alchemy in the War Within as there was from within Dragonflight, but there are some significant changes as well. So if you are new or if you are experienced, there should be something in here that helps you. If nothing else, you can follow along with this and you should get to skill 100 in a relatively straightforward fashion. Let's talk about some of the materials that are going to be needed. Your path may vary. One thing I do quite like to do with my leveling guides is to try and give you a shopping list so that you can just go out and buy some materials and know that you'll have enough to get the job done. It's a little bit difficult to do with Alchemy because you do still get to about skill 50 in a deterministic way, but your path from skill 50 all the way to 100 is going to be dependent on what you discover. The entire profession is based around this discovery system. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a second. But it does mean that with a little bit of RNG involved, you may discover something different to somebody else, and so might incur some slightly different crafting prices and materials if your goal is to just get this to level 100 quickly. But let's talk about some of the materials that may be needed then. Mycobloom is your basic herb. This is the new War Within basic herb. This will be found in all of the zones. Herbalists will be picking this up left, right, and centre, and it should be relatively cheap on the auction house. I say relatively, relative to the price of the other ones at least. We have Lure Drop, Orbinid, Blessing Blossom, and a Ratha's Spear. These are the 4 uncommon herbs. And these sort of dictate what the potion or the flask is sort of designed to do. And we then have the rare material called Knoll Lotus. This is predominantly used, I think, only in flasks. Flasks, yes, are back again. I know if you played in Dragonflight, you may be aware that we had files. Those have been demoted to sort of profession buffs now. Flasks are back as your main sort of combat buff. We probably won't need to worry about these too much, but it's worth paying attention to them, at least making you aware of them at this point. Writhing samples, crystalline powders, leyline residue, and viridescent spores. These are like your elemental materials that can be picked up, once again, mostly via herbalism and mining. But unlike Dragonflight, they are not used in anywhere near the same quantities. You're experienced with rousings and awakens from Dragonflight, you can rest easy that these are not going to play quite as big of a part in your alchemy as they might have done in previous expansions. A couple of vendor reagents, obviously gilded vials, and we now have this dilution solution, which is another vendor material. Both of these can be bought from your local alchemy vendor, and are pretty easy to come by. The only thing to note about quality here is that for the purpose of leveling, you'll notice I've chosen to use quality 1 herbs. We're leveling. We're not trying to make things super duper mega high quality just yet. We're just trying to get this bar filled. We're just trying to skill up. We're trying to get some skill under our belt so that and eventually we can make some higher quality stuff. So using quality 1 components for the purpose of leveling should keep things relatively cheap. Now, you may have noticed on screen that my Goblin Guide to the War Within is now available. It's available to my patrons. I will leave a link in the description for it. But this is where I've... this is basically my notes to showcase it ever so quickly. This is my notes, and I've got 300 plus pages of notes and details and information about everything goblineering in the War Within, and this is a nice little written format version of what we're going through today. If you're interested, check out the link in the description. But let's see, where do we start with alchemy then? We start off with experimentation. What we really need to do is learn some new stuff. You can see our trainer's not going to teach us much at all. Our focus is to get to skill 25. We've got to get to skill 25 to unlock our spec trees. And the way we're going to do that is with this experimentation. Now, we can't experiment yet because we don't have these core catalysts. Where do these come from then? Well, core catalysts come from neutralizing concoctions. This is a cool little recycling system. Anytime you make some potions or find some potions or maybe even choose to buy some potions when they're the right price, this is like a recycling system. You can throw any potion, any flask, any vial into the mix here, and it will break it down into those core catalysts. This is where we use that dilution solution, which I mentioned as being a vendor reagent. Well, if that's the case, then we need some basic potions. So let's go ahead and make ourselves a bunch of basic potions just so we have something to recycle. I probably suggest start with making about 5 of these. These are going to be relatively cheap, relatively easy. Alternatively, if it is, if you're following this further into the expansion, there's a good chance that you might have some of these lying about and won't need to make them to begin with. You can throw them straight in the neutralization, break them down. And this should start to give us some core catalysts. You get 1 or 2 each time. We only need a handful of them right now. But get used to this process. These 3 are... This is sort of tutorial mode for Alchemy right now. This process is something that you'll do quite a lot in the beginning, as you need these catalysts to experiment. You need to experiment to learn new recipes. You need to learn new recipes to, well, play with Alchemy properly. But now we've got a bunch of core catalysts. We can do a few experimentations. My recommendation at this point is to use just basic mycobloom for your experimentation. There is good reason to use the other herbs to experiment with. As if you do research something, if you do research something new, it is going to be something that uses that herb. So eventually, when you're fishing for sort of the final recipes, you might need to cherry pick exactly which herb you use to make sure that you get the right one out of it. But for the purpose of leveling, just use mycobloom. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be effective. There's a good chance it will teach us something new. There is the chance to go boom, as you may have noticed there. We explode and we go boom. Now, occasionally, this will also give you a debuff. I'm lucky this time around it hasn't, but sometimes it will also give you a debuff. This is going to slow down your progress a little bit with Alchemy, but there is a way to circumvent this, which we'll talk about in a minute. There we go. We've done enough experimentations. We reached skill 25. We actually overshot a little bit. We got to 27. Not a problem. This is where we've unlocked our first crafting tree. We will also have unlocked the ability to craft a few new things from the trainer, but in an interesting fashion. I never really felt that these were particularly worthwhile crafting whilst leveling up. Pick them up anyway, as it's nice to have them. We'll go back and we'll craft one of everything later on. Anyway, once you have finished leveling, you probably want to harvest first-time craft bonuses, as these are going to give you some early knowledge points, which will mean you can progress nice and quickly with your profession. But we've hit skill 25. We've hit skill 25. Where do we go from here? We are going to unlock our first specialization at this point. You get 1 specialization at 25. You unlock a second one at 50, a third one at 60, and your 4th one, you'll unlock all of them by the time you reach skill 75. So by the end of this little video, if you're following along, you should have access to all of these. But we're going to start with the Thaumaturgy tree. We're going to unlock this one. This is because it gives us a new recipe. It gives us this Thaumaturgy recipe. This is the foundation of Alchemy's transmutation system for the War Within. Transmutes work a little bit differently this expansion like they have previously. And what this in essence does is breaks down 20 materials to get some raw components out of it. There's a lot to this. I'm not going to go into too much detail about Thaumaturgy for the purpose of this leveling video, because I'm quite sure there'll be... I'll do some dedicated videos on this because it's quite interesting. So, hit the like button, stay subscribed for those. They'll be coming soon. But we are going to use Thaumaturgy to get ourselves all the way to skill 50. This is the quickest and easiest way I found to get to skill 50. There is the chance that you can start crafting some of the things that you discovered, but we're going to utilize those a little bit later on anyway. Thaumaturgy is actually going to be quite cost effective, I think, even at the beginning of the expansion, because you might notice it's spitting out some other components. This is the cool thing about Thaumaturgy. You put something in and it gives you always something out. Mycobloom, if you choose to use it, you could probably use Mycobloom or Bismuth here. Mycobloom is going to spit out some Bismuth for you, and it's going to spit out some Weaver Cloth. It might give you some Storm Dust, and it will also give you some of this ominous transmutagen. Not something we're going to particularly need for the purpose of leveling, but this could be a useful component to you later on in your alchemy journey. So we're going to do this all the way to 50. Not often when you are leveling do you end up making things that you then might actually be able to sell, and potentially even for a profit. But these things, remember, don't leave them in your bags. Either throw them back into Thaumaturgy, break them down to get yourself something else, or throw them up on the auction house. You might as well try and at least make a little bit of gold while you're doing this. But let's get this to skill 50. From 50 onwards, at skill 50 we unlock our second specialization tree. It's at skill 50 where the path gets a little bit varied. From this point on, or up until this point, I should say, we've pretty much only used Mycobloom, and by the time we get to skill 50, I think we'll have used roughly 500 Mycobloom, maybe a touch more. Let's let these last three come through. 48, 49, the last one for 50. You no longer get skill points once you hit skill 50 with Thaumaturgy, so this is where we want to stop. Now, your options are clearly very limited, super duper mega limited on where we go from here. You might be tempted to press the meticulous experimentation button. I want to take 2 minutes to just have a little bit of a discussion about this, as I would probably suggest avoiding this, especially if you are early on your alchemy journey or it's very early in the expansion, mostly because it actually consumes artisan's acuity. This is a limited resource that's going to become really valuable to us the further we play with alchemy. Eventually, we're going to want to get some profession tools to min-max our skill. We're going to want to go explore the world to try and get more knowledge points to fill out our spec trees. Artisan's acuity is a key crafting reagent for doing all of those, which is why I would probably recommend avoiding, where possible, spending it in meticulous experimentation, even though it looks very tempting. It looks very tempting because it's going to give you 5 skill points, and you might be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'd still suggest maybe not for now. You can use this later on in your adventure to unlock more recipes, as it does have a slightly better chance to teach you a new recipe. For now, try to avoid it. If you were lucky earlier in doing some of the initial experimentations, you might have unlocked something. You can see here we unlocked a tempered potion, but there's lots of things you could have unlocked. There's a bunch of potions or a bunch of flasks. Pretty much any potion and any flask is what's going to take us from skill 50 all the way to skill 100, but we are going to have to kind of fish for them a little bit. If you weren't lucky enough to get something first time, you can choose at this point to continue doing your experimentation. You use the recycling system as we did previously. Maybe make some more cheap Algari healing potions, throw them into your neutralizing concoctions to get your catalysts, then look at doing some more experimentations and fish for more goodies. But if you were lucky enough to get something, like I was here, you can just look at crafting these. Potions are usually cheaper. Tempered potion's actually a really good one to find, by the way. Frontline potion is also another one that is quite easy to get, and I think is going to be relatively cheap. Flasks are going to be more expensive to craft from 50 to 100, but of course they're also considered more valuable to people. You might have more success selling them and making some gold from it. But most of these potions and most of these flasks at this point can actually take you all the way to skill 100. And that's what you're in essence going to want to do. If you unlock something that looks worthwhile for you to craft, you're going to want to obviously do a little bit of napkin maths, figure out exactly how many of the materials you need. Head to the auction house, buy some materials and craft away. It's kind of nice that they've made this 50 to 100 process a little bit easier. It was tedious as all hell in the early days of the beta, but they have smoothed it out. They've made it a little bit better as we are closing in on the launch of the expansion. I think most of the potions go yellow at around skill 90, but by that point you should probably be aggressively experimenting all the same. While these are doing their thing, I will talk about where your options may be going forward. I want to talk about the experimentation a little bit more, because there is a way when you go boom and you get put on cooldown to counteract it, but it does require you to spend some knowledge points. Whilst these are crafting, we have a little bit of a look in here. The alchemical mastery tree. Actually, we're skill 80 for reference by now, which means we can technically unlock all 4 of our specialization trees by this point, which is very nice. The alchemical mastery tree, if you were to put 30 points into this, you get an item called formulated courage. This basically allows you to ignore that go boom cooldown, which is very handy, especially at the beginning of the expansion or the beginning of your journey when you have no recipes. You could put 30 points into this first. You could unlock this formulated courage. Don't worry, alchemical mastery node is a really, really, really good node to be putting knowledge points in anyway. So they're definitely not going to be going to waste. There's lots of other bonuses and perks you get on the path to this. But if you can unlock this formulated courage, I can use one here. It gives you the mad scientist able to focus on alchemical experimentations regardless of how many hairs you singe or limbs you grow, because science is fun. It only lasts for 10 minutes, but it will mean that you can press the experimentation button as much as your heart's desire within that period, and hopefully then fill your list with plenty of other goodies. We've hit skill 80. You can see this one potion we got is yellow, but fortunately there are still some other options. If you are lucky enough to get some of the other potions, you can still craft these for a few more points, but the very, very final stretch is going to have to be done with flasks. I would recommend, well, I mean, it's hard to recommend anything really, because the one you get is going to be different, but you are probably going to get from sort of 85-ish to 100 to craft some flasks. So just do some experimentation basically, and you will get there quite quickly and easily. From that point on, your journey with alchemy is going to be improving your profession gear, unlocking more recipes, and of course optimizing the use of your concentration to squeeze as much gold out the profession as you can. But I will leave it there for this one then, boys and girls. That should hopefully get you to skill 100 in alchemy relatively quickly, in a relatively straightforward fashion. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the comment section down below or come say hi over on the Discord. And of course, if you want the written version of this, and of course the written version for every other one of the professions, I've done the exact same thing for all of the professions in the War Within, consider checking out my Patreon for the Goblin Guide to the War Within. But I've been Manthieus, boys and girls. I hope that was very helpful. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.